A farmer understands the needs of every season, and so do Farm Bureau members. When Arkansas families needed electricity, our members brought it. Reliable roads, our members built them. Agricultural education, our members provided. Today's members may not live on a farm, but their connections are as close as ever. So when that difficult season comes, no member has to face it alone. For every season, Arkansas Farm Bureau. Join today.
And welcome back to the program. As I reviewed earlier, the Arkansas court system's been a volleyball match this week of rulings related to same-sex marriage. The latest, as of Friday afternoon, the state Supreme Court has issued a stay, bringing issuance of marriage licenses for same-sex couples to a halt, at least for now. This Tuesday, 3 Republican candidates are vying for their party's nomination for Attorney General, and they join me in studio now for a discussion on the topic. Patricia Nation, David Sterling, Leslie Rutledge, thank you all for being here. I know you're very busy with this last flurry of campaign activity. I know where you all stand personally on the subject of same-sex marriage. You're all opposed to it, but I want to know where you guys stand professionally and how you would conduct yourself in the Attorney General's office in this respect. Patricia, I'm going to come to you first on this. If the Supreme Court upholds the Piazza decision on same-sex marriage ruling, what would you do as Attorney General to continue on this track?
Well, Roby, as Attorney General, if this ruling is upheld, the Attorney General must enforce the laws. And so I am confident and very hopeful that this decision will not be upheld for a variety of reasons.
All right, David, what about you? How would you handle it?
Well, again, I think that the rule of law is what we're going to follow here in Arkansas, and if the Supreme Court upholds it, I will follow Arkansas law as well. But what's really important about this is that the ruling itself, that basically an amendment to the Arkansas Constitution that was by very definition grafted into the Constitution when it passed by a 75% majority in 2004 is somehow unconstitutional. What Judge Piazza said is that the Constitution is unconstitutional, and based on that,
he predicated that on the U.S. Constitution and the 14th Amendment. So.
Well, he had two elements of that ruling. He ruled that it was unconstitutional under the U.S. Constitution and also under the Arkansas Constitution. Whether or not it's unconstitutional under the U.S. Constitution will ultimately make its way to the U.S. Supreme Court.
How would you handle it, Leslie?
Sir, if the state Supreme Court does uphold Judge Piazza's ruling, which I don't think that the Supreme Court will do, having worked for the Arkansas Court of Appeals for a couple of years, then the Supreme Court, the Court of Appeals, they take a long time often to address these, and I'm certainly glad that the court put a stay on the marriages. But if they do, then as Attorney General, it will be my job to uphold the law. But I think that we should continue, pushing to ensure that the intent of the voters, with their desire to have marriage between a man and a woman, is upheld.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but can't the Attorney General appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court if they're not satisfied with the state Supreme Court decision? Would any of you pursue this at the U.S. Supreme Court?
Well, actually, to trigger that type of action, it's possible. But today we've got at least 8 states who have ruled on this issue, and what's going to eventually happen is that issue is going to go to the U.S. Supreme Court because you've got all of these different rulings happening at the state level, and this could be the case that is taken up, but there has to be certiorari before you can actually take a case up to the Supreme Court. So it's not going to be up to the Arkansas Attorney General. It will be up to the U.S. Supreme Court whether or not there is the appropriate case opportunity to have this before them.
You take it to the Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court?
Absolutely, but one thing that's really important to note is that Judge Piazza ruled on 2 elements of that case. He ruled that it was unconstitutional under the Arkansas Constitution and under the U.S. Constitution. To the extent that the appeal of his ruling regarding the Arkansas Constitution, the Arkansas Supreme Court is going to be the ultimate authority on that. So that'll just stop there, whatever they decide. If they decide that that the amendment is constitutional under Arkansas Constitution and keep the ban in place, then the element of his opinion that said that it's unconstitutional under the U.S. Constitution, there will be a direct line of appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court, and absolutely I'll pursue that.
Leslie?
Certainly, and as you know, David mentioned, Patricia, I think that we all agree on this, which is nice to find when you're vying for office against one another. That one of the three of us will be defending this Arkansas Constitution and statutes. And so, yes, I would be cheerfully to argue before the Supreme Court after the Supreme Court granted cert based on the 14th Amendment. I do think there's a legitimate state interest in upholding marriage between man and a woman, and that would be something that I would be arguing as Attorney General.
Let's shift to another topic that has come up as a result of this same-sex marriage ruling, and that is the state legislature, who is going to lean on the Attorney General for legal advice. There's been discussion about a potential impeachment of Judge Piazza on this, and I guess if the state Supreme Court does it too, I wouldn't be surprised to see that folded in there. Leslie, what advice would you give to the state legislature? Does Judge Piazza's ruling rise to the level of an impeachable offense? Is it a high crime and misdemeanor?
Well, there was certainly some language in the judge's order that I found very surprising. It almost seemed as if the judge, was admitting that, that judges can be super legislators, and that was not his intent. And so he was already acknowledging that that was a possibility. And I would caution the legislature not to overstep, but at the same time, if they feel this is the judge overstepping, then they should, look to impeachment, and I would work with them.
David?
I would say that we have a system of checks and balances in place in our Constitution, and to the extent that the legislature wants to check the judiciary, I think that that's appropriate, just like Judge Piazza checked the legislature in issuing that opinion. So I don't think that it's inappropriate for them to consider that. And again, the part that just kind of gets me is the trial judge's role in all this is not to, his job is to follow the law, to interpret the law as it's written. And in this case, he seemed to kind of impose his will despite the legislature's intent. I think that the appropriate role for him would have been to find it to be constitutional and leave it to the Supreme Court to figure out whether or not it was unconstitutional or not. And I just think that he kind of stepped out there on a limb, and I think that that's why we have a system of checks and balances that we do. And as Attorney General, I will work with the legislature if they ask me for my advice and everything on how to proceed under the existing Constitution, or if the Constitution needs to be amended in order to provide for that. I'll give them the counsel that they ask for.
Patricia, is this an impeachable offense in your eyes?
Well, I really do believe that the spirit of impeachment is correct because this decision overturned the will of the people, and we decided overwhelmingly, and as David said, 75% of us under Amendment 83 want marriage defined in Arkansas as between a man and a woman. But the Supreme Court has already ruled on a case, and it's really an issue of justiciability, not impeachment, because we have a ruling in Arkansas that says that a judge can hear controversies dealing with separate branches of government. And so this gives Judge Piazza the authority to state that an amendment in Arkansas is unconstitutional. So I don't think the impeachment process would go anywhere, but I certainly agree with the fact that the overruling an act passed by Arkansas citizens overwhelmingly is certainly something that I highly disagree with.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you all for being here this morning. We very much appreciate you, Leslie Rutledge, David Sterling, Patricia Nation. Best of luck to all of you on Tuesday. We're going to be watching your race extremely closely, and I have a bad feeling I'm going to be up really late at night covering the returns on this. But best of luck to all of you.